There are individuals who at first glance seem absolutely harmless, people who present themselves with a kind, affectionate, and even charming demeanor. In the beginning, they show empathy, take interest in your stories, and appear to be exactly the kind of company anyone would want around. However, as time passes and you spend more time with them, a subtle transformation begins to unfold. Often so subtle, it's almost imperceptible. The friendly appearance begins to fade, and a new energy, heavier and more unsettling, starts to emerge. It's as if the true essence of that person is finally coming to the surface. And without you even realizing it, you're already entangled in an emotional web where that person starts manipulating you, draining your vital energy, interfering with your emotional balance, and, worse, making you doubt your own perception. In extreme cases, if you're not alert and prepared, you can end up spiraling into confusion and suffering, which takes strength, clarity, and a great deal of awareness to escape. Carl Jung, the renowned Swiss psychiatrist, studied this kind of phenomenon deeply and called it contact with the shadow, that dark side of human nature that tries to manifest itself even when disguised as kindness. The signs are always there, small, silent, yet incredibly powerful. They show up in various forms: subtle sensations, discomfort with no logical explanation, changes in your energetic field. It's crucial to pay attention to them because they are the first warnings your unconscious gives you. And more important than just recognizing them is learning how to protect yourself before it's too late. Staying until the end of this video might be one of the wisest decisions you make, because learning how to guard your inner peace is one of the most effective ways to preserve your mental health when dealing with toxic presences like these. Energy, unlike words, doesn't lie. When someone gives you an odd or unsettling feeling, even if they're smiling or speaking politely, trust that perception. By the way, tell me in the comments, have you ever experienced something like this? Just comment yes if you've ever felt that strange energy from someone. Chances are it's already happened to you. You meet someone for the first time, and even though everything seems normal, something inside you feels tight, a bit of stomach tension, a flutter in your chest. That person didn't do anything wrong, didn't say anything offensive, didn't act suspiciously, yet there was something in their eyes, maybe their tone of voice, or even the way they occupied space, that caused an unexplainable discomfort. This is where many people make a mistake. They choose to ignore those initial feelings because the rational mind starts offering justifications. I shouldn't judge without knowing. Maybe I'm being unfair. I'm probably overreacting, we think. After all, there's nothing concrete, no proof that this person poses any threat. But the unconscious already noticed. Jung often spoke about how our unconscious picks up on information long before our rational mind can interpret it. He called it the collective unconscious, a vast system of inherited knowledge passed down through generations, allowing us to detect danger before we can logically explain it. In other words, your intuition is not magic or paranoia. It's an alert signal from a deeper part of your psyche. Let me share something personal with you. A while back, a close friend introduced me to someone new. This person was very polite, soft-spoken, always smiling, and had a seemingly positive attitude. But there was something about them that made me uneasy. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. It was just a feeling, a silent tension in my body. My stomach would tighten, and my chest felt heavy whenever I was near that person. I ignored it. After all, how could I accuse someone of something without any proof? But as the months went by, I slowly realized that my intuition had been right all along. Behind the charm, that person was hiding manipulative behavior. Their actions weren't genuine, and their intentions were far from the transparency they seemed to portray. That's when I truly understood the power of energetic perception. Energy never lies. What often betrays us is our own decision to ignore it. If I had trusted my instincts from the start, I could have avoided a series of uncomfortable situations, emotional strain, and personal issues. Modern science has already proven that intuition is a form of unconscious knowledge. Our brain is capable of picking up micro-expressions, tone shifts, body language, and other almost invisible cues, elements that escape the conscious mind but are stored at deeper cognitive levels. When you meet someone and feel something strange, it's not random. It's because your unconscious mind detected a pattern, a signal of danger you've encountered before. Maybe it was a fleeting expression of contempt, a fake smile, or a tone that didn't match the words. But since your rational mind can't explain it in words, what you feel is just that sense we call intuition. And here's the problem. Most people ignore this internal warning because they can't justify it logically. That's a serious mistake, and one that can cost you emotionally. A common question people ask is, how can I tell if what I'm feeling is true intuition or just paranoia? This distinction is essential. True intuition is subtle but consistent. It shows up calmly but sticks around. You feel that discomfort every time you see the person, and instead of fading, it grows stronger. Paranoia, on the other hand, is loud, emotionally chaotic, and unstable. You feel random bursts of suspicion toward many people, and your perception changes constantly. That's usually a reflection of inner fear, not a real warning. Carl Jung once said that the unconscious understands before the conscious mind does, and that quote carries immense weight. Whenever you feel an inexplicable emotional discomfort around someone, pay attention. Don't brush it aside. That small, uneasy sensation may be the only warning you get before becoming entangled with someone who can seriously disrupt your life. And more than that, some people don't just emit strange energy. They have the power to drain yours without you even realizing it. And that's what we're going to explore next, because there are people who, silently and discreetly, suck your vitality, your clarity, and your joy. And the most dangerous part is, they often look completely harmless, even charming. For a long time, I couldn't understand why every time I spoke with that person, even though we never exchanged harsh words, never had any kind of argument, I would always leave the conversation feeling worse than before. There were no fights, no visible tension, nothing that could rationally explain the emotional exhaustion that followed each encounter. But the feeling was undeniable. Every time I talked to them, it was as if my energy was being drained. Gradually, I realized that the issue wasn't what we were talking about. It was the invisible dynamic behind it all. Have you ever felt like this with someone? Leave a comment below with the word drained if you've been through something similar. This person wasn't seeking genuine connection. What they were doing, though subtly, was using the conversation as a channel to absorb attention, focus, and even my inner balance. It wasn't a mutual dialogue with shared listening and presence. It was, in reality, a monologue disguised as interest, where the goal was to unload thoughts and emotions, expecting me to be there just to absorb it all. What looked like a normal conversation was actually a constant demand for validation, attention, and emotional energy. And the most concerning part? The emotional burden they carried would quietly shift onto me, as if I was somehow responsible for sustaining it. Through this process of observation and silent depletion, I began to understand one of the most dangerous dynamics that can occur between two people. The one that operates quietly, without aggression, without visible harm, but slowly drains you, one interaction at a time. Some people don't hurt you with harsh words or obvious actions. They erode you little by little. They steal your shine, your motivation, your clarity, until you feel like someone who no longer possesses their own light. Carl Jung offered us a powerful insight into this behavior. According to him, individuals who don't acknowledge and integrate their own shadow, the repressed, unaccepted, unresolved parts of the psyche, end up projecting that content onto others. That means the anxiety, emotional emptiness, and inner chaos they carry begins to be transferred onto you. Without realizing it, you start to feel like you're carrying a burden that isn't yours. There are specific signs that can help you identify when someone is draining your vital energy. The first is the constant centralization of conversations. Whenever you talk to this person, the topic always revolves around their problems. It doesn't matter how lightly the conversation begins, it always ends up in complaints, frustrations, or personal conflicts. And what's even more telling, they don't seek solutions. They just want to unload, to pass that emotional weight onto you. The second major sign is how they react when you try to set boundaries. If you say you need some time for yourself or that you're unavailable, a feeling of guilt suddenly arises. They make you feel selfish, as if you're abandoning someone who needs you. It's subtle emotional manipulation, but effective because it plays with your sense of responsibility and empathy. You start to feel guilty for taking care of yourself. The third sign is perhaps the most revealing, the relief you feel when you walk away, when someone is truly important to your life, when their presence is healthy, their absence brings longing. But when someone is toxic, distance brings relief. If, after pulling away from someone, you notice that your body feels lighter, your mind clearer, and your energy returning, that is a powerful sign that the person was draining you. This process, in most cases, doesn't come from conscious malice. Many people who drain others have no idea they're doing it. What happens is they've never learned to face their own emptiness. They've never dealt with their own shadows. And not knowing how to access a source of inner light, they look for it in others. They absorb it. They feed off your emotional vitality because they don't know how to generate their own. But it's crucial to understand one thing. You are not responsible for healing anyone. It is not your mission to save people from the pain they refuse to face themselves. If someone is draining your energy, even if it's someone close to you, you have every right to protect your emotional health and walk away. Failing to do so may lead you to a state of chronic exhaustion, where you lose touch with your boundaries, your needs, and even your sense of self. And that's just the doorway to an even more dangerous pattern. There's a deeper and more destructive layer to these relationships, when the person not only drains your energy, but begins to make you doubt your own perception. This is what we call silent manipulation, a form of control that doesn't show up through direct aggression, but through small actions and words that slowly erode your inner trust. This type of manipulation is dangerous because it doesn't look like an attack. On the contrary, it appears in the form of concern, kindness, or love. It hides in the details, in a calm tone of voice, in seemingly innocent words, in subtle gestures. Phrases like, "You're overreacting, like always," "That never happened," "You're imagining things," "I never said that," or "You misunderstood me." And little by little, you begin to doubt your memory, your emotions, your own perspective. This pattern has a name in psychology: gaslighting. It's a strategy that destabilizes another person emotionally, making them question their reality. Jung used to say that everything we deny in ourselves, we project onto others. And that's exactly what these people do. They can't face their own flaws, so they manipulate someone else's reality in order to maintain control. One of the most serious consequences of gaslighting is that over time, the victim loses connection with their truth. You start to believe you're always wrong, that your way of seeing things is flawed, that you need someone else's approval before trusting your own feelings or decisions. And that creates emotional dependency. The more you need external validation, the easier it is for someone to control you. There are clear signs that someone is manipulating your perception. One of them is the constant change in narrative. What they said yesterday, they deny today. What happened last week is now dismissed as your imagination. And when you try to point out these contradictions, they flip the situation and accuse you of being confused, forgetful, or misinterpreting things. Another sign is how your emotions are constantly invalidated. When you express how you feel, you're immediately labeled as dramatic, sensitive, or unstable. You become, in their version of the story, the problem. Another sign is isolation. Little by little, these people start to distance you from others, claiming that no one else understands you the way they do, that they're the only ones who truly get the situation. And so, you disconnect from support systems, becoming increasingly dependent on their distorted version of reality. And finally, a devastating sign. After talking with this person, you feel more confused than before. Instead of clarity, you're left with doubt, wondering whether what you lived was real or imagined. You start questioning if you're going crazy, or if you really are the one who's always wrong. The only way to start protecting yourself from this kind of manipulation is by reclaiming confidence in your own emotions. If something hurt you, it's valid. No one has the right to tell you how you should or shouldn't feel. Strengthen your support network. Talk to someone you trust. Compare your perception with others. Often, an outside observer can clearly see what you, from inside the manipulation, are no longer able to recognize. If there's a pattern in your relationships where you constantly end up believing that you're the problem, even when your instinct and experience tell you otherwise, then it's time to reflect seriously on that dynamic. Because someone who truly wants the best for you, who genuinely respects who you are, would never use their own insecurity to distort your perception of reality just to make you doubt yourself. And this brings us to one of the most disturbing aspects of these interactions. Some people don't just manipulate what you see or feel, they project their own emotional baggage onto you. They transfer their shadows, their fears, traumas, frustrations, and flaws directly onto you, making you carry what was never yours to begin with. This type of manipulation is even more subtle than gaslighting. While gaslighting directly attacks your confidence by making you question what you perceive, this form works quietly, turning you into a container for someone else's internal chaos. Carl Jung explained this mechanism in depth. According to him, every psychic content that a person isn't ready to acknowledge as part of themselves, their darker traits, contradictions, unresolved conflicts, is projected onto others. And more often than not, that other is someone close, someone emotionally available and empathetic. You might be labeled selfish simply for setting healthy boundaries. You might be called cold or insensitive, when in reality, it was the other person who couldn't handle their emotions. You may find yourself accepting blame for things that weren't your responsibility, just because someone refuses to take accountability for their own actions. When someone avoids facing their internal flaws, they need an external container, and that container often ends up being you. Let me share an experience that deeply impacted me. I met someone who always seemed to be in conflict with the world. There was always a new complaint, a new betrayal, a new enemy. According to him, people were selfish, fake, manipulative. But over time, I noticed something curious. He behaved exactly like the people he constantly criticized. He belittled those who disagreed with him, demanded loyalty but never offered it, expected support but never gave it in return. And the strangest thing? Eventually, he started trying to convince me that I was just like them. He said I didn't care enough, that I was cold, that I was becoming just like those horrible people he despised. For a while, that manipulation started to affect me. I found myself questioning, am I really selfish? Am I becoming a worse person? But then I realized what was happening. He didn't want to face his own shadow, so he needed to deposit it somewhere. And that somewhere was me. When I finally refused to carry a guilt that wasn't mine, he distanced himself. And it didn't take long for him to find someone else to project onto. There are practical ways to identify when someone is projecting their shadow onto you. A clear indicator is to notice how you feel after being around that person. If you leave the interaction feeling confused, emotionally heavy, burdened by a discomfort that wasn't there before, ask yourself, does this really belong to me? Or am I carrying something that's not mine? People who constantly project never take responsibility. They always play the victim in every story. They point fingers outward, never inward, and they make you feel like somehow you're to blame for everything that goes wrong. The best way to protect yourself is to develop the ability to discern what belongs to you and what doesn't. When someone accuses you, pause and reflect honestly. Is there truth in this? If so, acknowledge it and grow. But if not, don't accept that weight. Set firm boundaries. If you notice someone is constantly trying to make you carry the burden of their unresolved issues, step away. It's not your job to be a mirror for pain that someone else refuses to face. And there's something even deeper. Some people don't just project their issues onto you. They can't stand to see you shine. That's right. There are individuals who stay close, who seem to enjoy your presence, who share affection and companionship. But deep down, they feel discomfort in the face of your growth. They won't say it out loud. They won't attack you directly. But every time you succeed, every time you grow, evolve, improve, their energy shifts. At first, it's hard to notice. Everything seems normal. But then you realize the celebrations fade. The compliments become rare. When you share your achievements, their responses are flat, unenthusiastic. Sometimes they try to minimize what you've done, saying it's not that big a deal, or lots of people have done that. And if you pay attention, you'll realize these reactions aren't isolated, they're a pattern. Carl Jung once said that envy is nothing more than a person's shadow that hasn't been integrated. When someone hasn't worked through their feelings of frustration, inadequacy, or comparison, they can't stand seeing in others what they couldn't achieve themselves. And the most dangerous part of this is, these people aren't distant. They're not obvious enemies. They're close friends, they're family, they're people around you, smiling, saying kind words. But inside, they're quietly unsettled by your success. I experienced this firsthand. Someone very close to me, a friend who, for a long time, showed support and partnership. But as I started gaining space, growing personally and professionally, their attitude began to shift. Every time I shared a new accomplishment, their responses came with doubt. When I talked about a new project, they'd say things like, "Are you sure that's going to work?" Or, "I think you're moving too fast." Or, "I'm not sure that market is for you." At first, I thought they were just trying to be realistic. But with time, I noticed a pattern. It wasn't concern, it was discomfort disguised as advice. What's most curious is that they had no problem celebrating other people's victories. They'd cheer on colleagues, congratulate acquaintances. But when it was my turn, their enthusiasm vanished. That's when it hit me. They couldn't handle my light. And this happens more often than we realize. Envy doesn't always show up as open hostility. It often comes masked as friendship, affection, proximity. And that's what makes it so dangerous. Because you trust. And when you trust, you open up. So how can you tell when someone is silently resenting your growth? The answer lies in the small reactions. When you share a win, and instead of a genuine smile, you get a blank stare or a discouraging comment. When instead of support, they start listing problems, pointing out flaws, or planting doubt in your mind. When compliments are replaced by advice that holds you back rather than propels you forward. And perhaps the biggest giveaway, when those people, upon seeing your continuous progress, slowly start pulling away, as if your light is too much for them to handle. This is not a coincidence. The issue isn't that you're changing too much or becoming someone impossible to keep up with. What's truly happening is that the light you emit, the natural glow you acquire through growth and authenticity, starts to deeply disturb the shadows that dwell within certain people around you, and this is inevitable. Jung once said that when someone refuses to acknowledge the darker parts of themselves, their fears, frustrations, and failures, that person begins to project those aspects onto others. And that's exactly what happens when someone silently feels envious of you. What's most unsettling is that these people often have no idea they're being overtaken by this emotion. They don't recognize themselves as envious. They won't admit that their cold attitude, distant gaze, or subtly sarcastic remarks stem from resentment. Instead of looking inward and confronting their unresolved issues, they channel that energy outward, trying to hold back the very people who are growing. And they do it in discreet, disguised ways that don't trigger immediate alarm. These are phrases that sound like advice, but are really hidden criticisms. Lukewarm compliments filled with caveats, smiles that fade the moment you turn away. If you're not paying close attention, this silent influence can start to infect you. Little by little, you might begin to hold yourself back without realizing it. You may shrink your dreams, slow your steps, place limits where there once were none, all in an effort to avoid making others uncomfortable. And the worst part, you might begin to feel guilty for wanting more, for aiming higher, for being more. You may end up dimming your own light just to avoid unsettling those who feel threatened by your shine. This is a real and extremely dangerous risk for anyone on a journey of growth. So how do you protect yourself from this kind of energy? The answer isn't in direct confrontation. You don't need to justify yourself or try to convince anyone that you deserve what you have or that you're entitled to achieve even more. You don't need to prove anything. The key lies in recognizing the signs and stepping away with wisdom. Surround yourself with people who genuinely celebrate your victories, people who cheer for your progress, who feel inspired by your path instead of disturbed by it, because those who truly admire you have no need to compete with or diminish your light. On the contrary, they feel motivated to shine alongside you. But the most serious warning is still to come. There are people who not only feel envy, not only project their fears or distort your perception, there are people who carry within them a destructive force that, if not recognized and blocked in time, can lead to the collapse of not only your energy, but your entire emotional, mental, and even life stability. We're talking about those individuals who, almost hypnotically, seem incredible at first, who arrive with charisma, with magnetism, with an intensity that captivates. But behind that charming surface lies a chaotic pattern that slowly infiltrates the lives of others like a silent storm. These people don't come with obvious warnings. They don't wave red flags. Often, they present themselves as great friends, soulmates, or potential partners. There's a rare, almost magical feeling of connection. In the beginning, everything feels intense and exciting. The conversations are deep, the time together is magnetic. You feel like you've met someone different, someone truly special. But over time, that intensity starts to shift. What once felt like passion turns into turbulence. Emotional depth becomes constant drama. Small issues become crises. Joys turn into uncontrollable highs and lows. And by the time you realize it, you're already in the eye of the storm. Carl Jung spoke of these people as those completely ruled by their shadow. People who have no awareness of their inner chaos, and because of that, carry it with them wherever they go. Instead of resolving their internal pain, they spread it to those around them. It's as if they unconsciously recreate chaos wherever they are, and if you're nearby, you'll be pulled into it too. I once met someone like that. At first, it felt like I was in the presence of someone truly unique, strong, intense, with an almost cinematic presence. This person was captivating, moved you with their stories. Their life was full of dramatic events. The conversations were never small talk. There was always something intense, something emotional, something gripping. And yes, in the beginning, I was enchanted. I felt drawn in, like I was part of a compelling narrative. But as time passed, the story became repetitive. There was always a new conflict, Someone betraying them, someone attacking them, another looming crisis. Their life was never stable, there was never peace. And the scariest part, I slowly realized I was becoming a part of that instability. What once felt like vibrant energy revealed itself as pure exhaustion. What seemed like a deep connection turned out to be an emotionally draining game. What looked like authenticity became a cycle of manipulation fueled by endless drama. Until it finally hit me, this person didn't want to escape the chaos. They were so identified with confusion, with lack of control, that their entire identity was built on it. Chaos was their emotional habitat, and by staying connected to them, I was being pulled into that same destructive pattern. The biggest sign that someone carries this kind of destructive energy is simple yet profound. Chaos follows them wherever they go. There's a huge difference between someone going through a tough phase, something we all experience, and someone whose life is a continuous sequence of instability. When you notice that this person never has peace in any area of life, that there are always arguments, disappointments, scandals, or breakdowns surrounding them, that's a major red flag. Look into this person's past. Watch the patterns. If every friendship ends in betrayal, if every relationship ends in drama, if every opportunity turns into disaster, if their stories are always turbulent with everyone they've crossed paths with, don't believe it will be different with you. You are not the exception. No one is. Jung used to say, until the unconscious is made conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That's why these patterns repeat, because the person doesn't want to or isn't able to see what needs to change within. And until that happens, they'll keep repeating the same script, destroying everything and everyone they get close to. The best way to protect yourself from someone like this is clear and direct. Don't try to save them. Don't fall for the illusion that things will be different with you. Don't believe that your love, your patience, or your presence will be enough to change the nature of someone who has chosen to live in chaos. The only thing that truly works is distance. Guard your peace. Build an environment of emotional stability around you. And above all, don't let anyone tear that down. Because if someone brings disorder into every area of their life, it's only a matter of time before that same disorder starts flooding into yours too. It's important to understand that not everyone who crosses your path in life will arrive with clear intentions or obvious behavior. Some people never show any direct aggression or visible offense. On the contrary, many come smiling, seem open, even caring. However, even without meaning to or even realizing it, they can have a deep impact on you, and not always a positive one. Some will slowly absorb your vital energy like emotional sponges, and you won't notice it right away. You'll just begin to feel tired, dull, less motivated to walk your own path. Others will act in more subtle and strategic ways. They manipulate with sweetness, with carefully chosen words, with gestures that seem harmless. Until one day, you realize you're doubting yourself. You can no longer trust your feelings, your decisions, your own perception. And it didn't happen overnight. It was a slow deconstruction, starting with little suggestions, small corrections, slight distortions of reality. There are also those who, instead of dealing with their own traumas, begin to unload everything onto you. They project their fears, guilt, and inner conflicts onto you. They place you in positions where you start feeling responsible for things that were never yours to carry. The emotional weight they can't handle ends up on your shoulders, and that weighs you down, drains you, hurts you. And then there's an even more silent, hidden type, the one who can't stand to see you grow. Have you ever felt disguised envy from someone close to you? If so, write, "I've felt it," in the comments. They may have been by your side for years. They may smile with you, say they're happy for your wins. But deep down, every time you shine, they feel uneasy. Every step you take forward triggers discomfort in them, because your light exposes the shadow they refuse to face. And so, without saying a word, they'll start to undermine your self-confidence. They'll plant doubts, they'll devalue your achievements, they'll slowly pull away when things are going well for you and reappear when you're not doing so well because your success hurts them. But among all these profiles, there's one that poses the greatest danger: the person who lives immersed in chaos. Someone who doesn't know inner peace, who is always entangled in crises, emotional conflicts and disorder. And more than that, they seek someone to join them in the turmoil. They don't want to leave the chaos, they want company in it. They want to pull you into the mess, the confusion, the instability. Jung said that these people are so disconnected from their own consciousness that they turn the world around them into an extension of their inner disorder. And if you're not alert, you could get dragged into it without even noticing. That's why the key lies in developing a more sensitive perception of the energies around you. It's not about living in fear or shutting yourself off from the world, nor is it about judging everyone around you. It's about creating awareness, observing more closely, listening to what your body, your intuition, and your emotions are telling you. Because those messages often arrive before your mind can explain them logically. If you dedicate yourself to identifying these signals, if you start taking seriously the way certain people make you feel, you'll be able to protect yourself before it's too late. You'll set boundaries before losing your clarity. You'll preserve your energy before it's drained. And most importantly, you'll avoid being dragged into emotional suffering that was never yours to begin with. Protecting your inner peace is not selfish. Saying no, walking away, choosing who stays in your life. This is not coldness, it's emotional intelligence, it's self-respect. Trusting your intuition isn't being dramatic, it's survival instinct. You have the right, and more than that, the responsibility to protect what keeps you strong, centered, and whole. Because if you don't take care of your peace, sooner or later, it will slip through your fingers. Now tell me, are you ready to protect your peace, to shield yourself from the energies that drain you and dim your light? If you've made it this far, comment, "I will protect my precious peace." I want to know you are here with me until the end, reflecting on all this with an open mind and an attentive heart. If this message made sense to you, if it brought value, hit the like button right now. It's just one click, it's free, and it helps this content reach more people who need to hear it. And if you want to keep walking this journey of self-knowledge, understanding the human mind, energy, relationships, and everything that surrounds Carl Jung's fascinating universe, subscribe to the channel now and turn on the notification bell. That way, you won't miss the upcoming videos, all crafted with high-quality content to strengthen your awareness and emotional intelligence. I'm Matthias, your mind philosopher, and I invite you to click the next video I left right here on the screen. Let's keep exploring this path of growth together with depth and real value.